Hey there, if you're buying a home in California, especially in the desert cities, and you're doing an inspection, it's probably going to seem like a lot. So I'm going to break it all down with one of my favorite home inspectors, Jeremiah, and he's going to talk about what he covers, what he doesn't cover, questions that you should be asking when you're choosing a home inspector. And I think that would actually happen whether you're here or even whether you're in any other state. These are going to be good questions for you to ask. And then also, how do we handle these inspections when you're a remote buyer? Because a lot of my buyers they're from out of the area and can't always be here for the whole process. And then also, what happens after that? What are the next steps? What does the form even look like when we're going to be requesting repairs? I'm going to have all of that for you in this video. So let's dive in now. So I'm here with Jeremiah Chieze, and he is with Brick by Brick Home Inspection. I would say you do 90% of my home inspections, so you are the perfect person to ask. So first of all, I want you to let everybody know, what should they expect from you during a home inspection?
The most important thing to remember is that a home inspection is a recommendation only inspection, meaning anything we call is recommendation only. Basically, it's a health and safety check for your buyer or your seller.
Mhm.
Whoever I'm representing, I'm looking for health and safety. So roof, structure, plumbing, electrical, heating and air. And if I
Mhm.
can get to all the windows, all the doors, and all the outlets and every nook and cranny, I'll try and do my best to check it.
Okay, perfect. So, what do you not do during a home inspection so people don't have false expectations?
Well, a lot of people, want to know, do you check washers and dryers? There's certain appliances we check and certain ones we don't.
Hmm.
It's hard to check appliances that have to run for a certain duration or have internal components that we can't examine.
Right.
So we do our best to see if they're functional, if they're staying.
Hmm.
But other things are, we're not technically supposed to go on a roof, which I do because you just saw me on there.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to go inside crawl spaces or under manufactured homes, but we do our best to look in there because we want to see the structure. And
Hmm.
also, the big one is like safety panels on electrical. If you don't know what you're doing, you shouldn't open it, but I want to see what the wiring looks like, unless it's a panel that I'm going to call. Those are the big things that we don't check. Another thing we get asked all the time is, do you do sewer inspections? Do you do
Right.
um, uh, mold inspections? Do you
Uh-huh.
do termite inspections? My job as a home inspector is to tell you if you need further evaluation. So let me go through the house first. That way you're not spending money on something you don't need.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. And I know in the past too, you've also looked at some pool equipment. And
Mm-hmm.
while you are not the final say necessarily on the pool equipment, you can probably look at it and say, hey, this should get further evaluation, correct?
Correct. If you're using a home inspector, just ask what their qualifications are. For
Hmm.
me, you can go to my website and see my qualifications as well as my background and sample reports.
Okay.
But most home inspectors, since I've had my real estate license back when I did a transaction eons ago,
Yeah.
had a home inspector say that the pool equipment wasn't working, found out he wasn't certified to look at a pool, and I
Hmm.
showed him how it worked.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm certified to work on pools. I'm certified to pretty much look at everything due to my background. But just make sure you know your home inspector's qualifications before having them look at anything.
Well, that is a perfect transition into
Okay.
what questions should you be asking your home inspector? So, I mean, let's say there's somebody looking in some other area and somewhere that you wouldn't drive to, which I tell you is almost nowhere. Just kidding.
Pretty much.
No, but what should you be asking, or what should people be asking their home inspector? What are some great questions?
How fast am I going to get my report?
Hmm.
What do you inspect, obviously?
Hmm.
Um, how far will you go? Do you go to these areas? And a big one, probably the number one question we get is, how much is it going to cost me?
Right.
So
Right.
I would say every home inspector is different. I'm one of these guys that goes everywhere.
Yeah.
A lot of home inspectors will pocket themselves in certain locations, and if
Hmm.
that's what they want to do, that's up to them. But if you need me, I'm there.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I have noticed that. We're both a long way from home right now.
Correct.
Yes. So, any other tips you want to give any home buyers and or home sellers out there?
Honestly, the best thing to do is make sure you know, like I said, your qualifications for the home inspector.
Right.
And I would say not all home inspectors do it, but I do. Hey, if you have an issue once you move into the home, that might have to do with something that was inspected, call me first so
Right.
I can tell you what direction to go, or call your agent.
Yeah.
Either one, that way we can communicate and help you best navigate how to solve it, because you should get a home warranty and have homeowners insurance. And sometimes if you don't call them first, you're going to spend a lot of money. So just always ask questions and always talk to somebody before making anything or making any decisions or spending any money.
And don't let anybody make you feel dumb for asking questions, by the way, because
no
that
such
is
thing
what
as a
we are hired to do, is basically answer questions and make people feel comfortable through the process.
Correct.
And and one more thing too, I wanted to just real quickly talk about the fact that if somebody is a remote buyer, one thing you and I have both done is we have gone over the summary either on FaceTime or on a video like this, whenever that's been whichever opportunity presents itself.
Right.
A video did help a couple of buyers find out that the sellers took a fridge that was in the garage during the during the home inspection. Then I did the final walkthrough. They were remote buyers, and I did the walkthrough, and they were like, "Where's the fridge?" And we had proof. It was in the garage when we did the home inspection, so it was perfect. Yeah, exactly.
Know what's in the house before you leave it.
Know what's in the house before you leave it. And then, so as far as remote buyers are concerned, I also wanted to point out that you are always wanting people to call you. You can go over the home inspection report with them, because even if they're 3-5 states away, you can make them feel comfortable with what happened in the summary, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, overall, at the time of the inspection, I am employed by you. I work for you. I am there and being paid to inspect your.
And he means you, not me.
Yeah. So when I come to your house,
right.
You can. I always tell my clients, you can call me anytime. I inspect every house like I'm buying it for myself, so I'm going to try and be as detailed as possible. And you also have to have a good agent that tells you that. So if you're looking for a good one, Lisa's your girl.
Thank you.
I
didn't pay him for that.
I highly recommend, if the video doesn't answer all your questions, call me. I'm almost always available. The only time I don't answer my phone is if I'm talking to a client about findings. Otherwise, I'll call you right back.
That is true. I can attest to that. Okay. Well, I'm going to let you go do your actual job, which is inspecting this home for our buyer, and we're going to go from there. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
So no home is going to be perfect, of course, and especially a resale property, right? So what we're going to find out, though, is we're going to find out the big ticket items, because at the very least, if you're okay with the big ticket items, you just want to make sure that you know what you're getting into, because maybe you got the home for a really good deal and you knew that this big ticket item was going to be part of the drill, right? And just so you know, too, technically speaking, every contract, because people, sometimes sellers will say, well, the property is sold as is. Well, actually, that's already in the contract. Every property is sold as is unless the sellers agree to make changes. And the buyers have the right to get a home inspection to make sure what they're getting into, and then they have the right to ask the seller to make changes. So let's talk about the next step, speaking of making changes. Or making repairs, right? So the next step after the home inspection is doing what's called a request for repairs. Now, the first thing to keep in mind is that the request for the repairs, actually the seller doesn't even need to respond to the request for the repairs. So, and it's just up to you if you want to move forward if they're not willing to do it, right? So some people are under the misimpression that certain things have to be fixed on a home in order for it to sell. And while there are a couple of exceptions, most notably, the home really does need to have, by law, smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, and earthquake straps on the water heater, at least in the West Coast. So, in fact, I've even seen it in areas that are not technically in earthquake zones on the West Coast. But those are the things that are required. And there are some regions and areas, like County is one of them, where there are a few things that are required to be done. But by and large, nothing has to be done, right? It's not like all of a sudden there's a new code and the seller of a home that was built in 1955 has to bring everything up to code. That would be prohibitive. Like, no home would sell. It would never happen. So what you as a buyer need to decide is, are you okay with the condition of the home at the price that you paid? So maybe the seller doesn't want to pay for something to be fixed.
but maybe it's just a matter of just convenience, so maybe they just want to give you a credit. Maybe they don't want to give you anything. It's just up to you to decide if you want to move forward, but that is part of your contingencies, right? So it is contingent on your approval of the home inspection. So quite frankly, it would behoove the seller to at least talk to you about it, right? So if you've got a situation where, honestly, at the end of the day, if it's possible, and I don't want to go too deep into the weeds because there are some loan programs where you can't just say, oh, hey, seller, give me a credit and I'm going to go fix this. And I'm going to give you a for instance. So let's say that there is a missing handrail on some steps that go down several feet and you're getting a VA or an FHA loan. There's a really good chance that your home appraiser is going to call that, and the loan will not close if that is not then installed. So that's something that you just want to keep in mind, is that there are going to be certain instances when it comes to the type of loan that you're getting. But your average conventional loan, or of course if you're doing cash, what you can do in theory is you can ask the seller, you can say, hey, we just got somebody to go out and take a look at this roof or something, and it looks like it's going to cost $5,000 to fix it, and will you give me a credit towards my closing costs instead of coming off the purchase price, by the way? So let's talk about that real quick too. So if let's say you want a $5,000 credit, and you say, okay, well, just reduce the cost of the house for $5,000. Well, if you're paying cash, fine. But if you're getting a loan, that $5,000 difference on your monthly payment is going to be nominal. However, when it comes to closing costs, most loans allow sellers to pay at least up to 3% towards your closing costs. So you can ask the seller to take care of $5,000 of your closing costs. And that's money that would come right out of your pocket along with your down payment right at closing. So that's actually going to be money better spent, is using it on your closing costs, right? Again, if you're talking about you're paying cash, that's a different story. You're actually not going to have as many closing costs as somebody getting a loan will have. And so it's not going to be as big of a difference, right? So you can just take it off the price of the house, and that's going to work just fine. So that would be one way to go. And the nice thing about doing that is, let's face it, it's human nature. If you're a seller and somebody asks you to fix something, you say, yes, I'll fix that. You're leaving this house, you're probably not going to get it done in the absolute best possible manner. I mean, some people will, but not everyone is going to, right? They're probably going to be like, well, let's just get it done at the person who's going to charge me the least amount of money. Whereas as a buyer, you might be more interested in having the person that's going to do the best job.
Okay, so I want to show you guys what one of the reports looks like. And I'm going to use Jeremiah's because, again, he's not the only home inspector out there. And there's great home inspectors out there. And I'm always going to give you, by the way, several options. But since he does do a lot of the inspections for my clients and has over the years, I thought I would just use this as an example to show you. So if you go to his website, he will have these sample reports. You can take a look at how they come out, and you can see everything's going to be broken up. There's going to be a summary about what are some of the issues. You'll notice recommendations versus actual safety hazards, which I think is great. Makes it very easy to understand. I was actually thinking of showing you guys one of our actual reports that we did because it actually shows quite a few things, but this gives you an idea, right? So you've got some safety recommendations. Here's some cracking, here's some buckling, here's some loose siding, stuff like that. So, a split in the fence, things like that. So that is going to be an example number one, looking at this. And also, again, I don't think it would be too much to ask most home inspectors. And again, depending on where you are, you could be watching this in any part of the country. And my guess is this is going to stand firm for all of that, right? So if I would assume that if you're in Maine and you're exactly opposite corner of the world from us, or at least the country rather, and I would think that the inspections are going to work much the same way. Partly because now I've only been a real estate agent on the West Coast, but I've been a real estate agent in Nevada. That's fun when people start honking when you're trying to make a video. In Nevada, in California, obviously, and also in Washington State. And all of these work the same way. So I would imagine that anytime you're going to, if you can't just go to their website and take a look at some sample reports, my guess is you could probably ask them, hey, can you provide me a sample? I'd love to see what your report looks like. Most inspectors these days are going to have reports that can be done very quickly, that are saved as a PDF, and that they can send to you like this so you can take a look at them. So that's number one. Okay, so number two is going to be, what do we do next? So we've done the inspection. You know what happened at the inspection. We have the report now, and 9 times out of 10, you're going to have that by that evening, right? So now, having said that, you don't have to respond the same day that you're getting the report or whatever. So unless you are up against your deadlines, and honestly, when we typically have anywhere from 10 to 17 days is pretty normal. 17 days is default. So we have everywhere from 10 to 17 days. And sometimes we put 10 in just to make, maybe there's another offer and we want to make this more attractive to the seller. We're going to get this done a little faster. So that's something that we do sometimes. But at that point, you don't have to respond, and again, unless you're up against that deadline immediately. So you can look at your report. We can dig into details like, are there, maybe do we need to get some bids? In case the seller says no, do we want to have that backup? Or, as I discussed as well, do we want to have a situation going where we can just ask for credit? Because then you can get that done and you can do it in a manner of, repair that you think is probably going to be superior to what, again, with human nature, what the seller might do as they're just walking away is just sort of like, okay, who's the cheapest person that can get this done? And then it's off my plate. Plus, I'm trying to pack and move and all the things. A lot of times it is better if you can get that credit and then you can do it, have it done yourself, and then hire the person that you want to have it done. Now, another option that can be done too is we can, and again, the seller has to agree, but we can get, let's say there's a roofing issue. We can actually get a roofing contractor to go out and take a look at the roof, provide an estimate, and then we can provide in this request that I'm about to show you, we can say, per the estimate attached, this work to be completed prior to closing. Okay, so let's talk about that. So we're going to put on here, so we're going to put our request for repair. So this is our California Association forms as of the last update, which was December of 2023. These do tend to change. Obviously, this is not legal advice. It's always going to be a good idea to talk to your inspector, talk to your agent, make sure that this is going to, involve your specific circumstances, all of this, right? Having said that, this would be the sort of normal average course of action. So we're going to come to this form here. I'm going to come to this form. I'm going to fill out the date that we're asking for things. This is the date that your contract was written on. And then that way we can just, basically the whole reason the contract has a date on it in the first place is just so that we can point to, this is the contract we're talking about. We're going to put in the address and all the people. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say buyer request that seller do fixes, right? So one thing we could do is seller to repair cracked roof tiles, something to that effect, done by licensed roofing contractor, which isn't always necessary, but I like to start there. And then proof invoice to be provided after completion. I think I'm spelling that wrong. Yeah, I'm totally spelling that wrong. Anyway, you get the idea. Okay, so what we can do also is if you wanted to have it done, so to be done like we were talking about, per roofing estimate attached. And then here we're going to put home inspection report. Ideally, you would put dated, whatever the date is. Here, I'm just going to use one that I've done before. And then here, we'll put like roofing bid by, what's a roofing company? Let's just call it ABC Roofers, right? So that's something you can do as well. You can also do a combination of things. So you could do, we want this to be done, but maybe there's some other things you want done, and maybe you want a credit to the buyer of maybe $5,000 perhaps, or so that's a credit. So that credit's going to go towards your closing costs. And just again, if you are paying for something out of pocket after closing, it's going to make more sense to keep more money in your pocket because your closing costs and your down payment are two separate things. The down payment is what you have to come up with for, let's say you're buying a $100,000 house. I mean, there aren't any right now, but let's just say that's what you're doing. And you're put 20% down. So we're just going to use that number for easy math. 20% of 100,000 is $20,000. That is your down payment. However, there are going to be closing costs associated with closing that. In this area, they tend to be around 2%. I can tell you in Washington State, they tend to be higher. They're around 3% or more for your loan closing costs, okay? So let's just say that 2%, because that is more of this area's norm, give or take. So that's going to be 2% of 100,000 is $2,000, right? Okay, so if you are going to come out of pocket, and let's just use that number, let's just say $2,000, right? And you know that you're going to have to come up with $2,000 at closing. That's money the seller can help you with. The down payment is not. So if that makes sense, you've got these two amounts of money that you're going to bring to close. One of them the seller can pay for you, the other one they cannot. So a credit here would be the $2,000, and that would be going towards your closing costs so that you just keep more money in your pocket. And then that money that you would have had to bring to closing, you can then use to make the repair after closing. But if you take it off the price of the home, $2,000 on a loan is nothing. It's pennies per month, and you're never going to make up that $2,000 anytime soon. So it makes way more sense to first and foremost get your closing costs covered if you want the seller to contribute anything to help you make repairs, okay? If you're paying cash, then yeah, take it off the price of the house because all of that is money that you're going to be bringing to the table. Okay, so two different things. But if you're getting a loan, it just makes more sense to ask for your closing costs to be covered. All right, so this section here has to do with termite. And this section here, of course, would be if you did just want to go ahead and ask for a reduction of the purchase price. So let's say we're going to ask for $98,000. So the revised purchase price shall be this 100,000 minus 2,000 that we were just talking about. So maybe we take this off here and you're paying cash. So let's just make it 98,000 even. Again, all for the purposes, just easy math, because I don't know of a $100,000 house anywhere within many, many miles of me that isn't, maybe I joke, currently on fire. But anyway, so the next section here for FHA or VA loan. So if you're getting an FHA or VA loan, the appraiser right here, the appraiser or other lender requirements, this is where we're going to ask for those items to be done. So you might actually have repair for request number 1 is for all of this, right? But then you might have to come back later after the appraiser does their thing, and you're going to say repair for request number 2. Well, I'm going to type it out, but this is what it's going to look like. And so here they're going to say handrail to be installed at back steps. I'm just using an example of something that does tend to come up. Maybe you have some steps down and there's no handrail, and FHA and or VA will likely, I can't guarantee you, will likely require that that be done prior to closing. Okay, so all of this to say, and I want to make sure that everybody is aware that this is the request. Now, once you've made those requests, that's what you've done. This is where we're changing the terms of the contract, right? And this is also, your inspection, your earnest money is protected based on your contingency that this whole contract is subject to your doing an inspection that you approve of. Part of your approval, again, yes, every contract is as is, but part of your approval says, I know it's as is. However, I want these changes made. So really a request for repairs is an amendment to the prior contract. Okay, so let's say that you knew something was wrong with the house before you even made the offer. You could put it in there, right? It doesn't make a ton of sense to do it there because, having your own inspector come out and take a look at it and explain it more to you and even getting more details about it so that it can be fixed accurately or whatever. It's probably the better idea anyway. But in theory, it's just all part of the contract. The request for repairs is an amendment to the contract, okay? And then what happens is that the seller can either agree to all of it, agree to a portion of it. That's really what usually tends to happen more than anything. Or they just say, well, let's just say you didn't even ask for a credit here. All you did was ask for this to be done. And then they say, no, we don't want to do that, but we're going to do a partial and we'll give you a credit for $5,000 and then you can do it later, right? So that would be an example. They also could just say they don't agree to any of it. And you're just left to go, okay, well, do I want to move forward or don't I, knowing that this will all be on my plate, okay? So other than even in the really like hectic sellers market that we were in a few years ago, even then sellers did make repairs, because what can happen as a seller, they should understand, or if you're a seller, you should understand. A lot of times a buyer is a seller too. You're selling your house to go buy this other one. But understand that just because you say no to this buyer, it doesn't mean the next buyer is going to ask for the same thing. And now your house is more market worn, right? It's been sitting longer. And buyers always want to know, and they see that a property, and they can see it on Zillow, it went under contract and then it came out of contract. And what would your question be if you were a buyer? What's wrong? What's wrong with that house? Did it not, did people say pass inspection? It's really not a pass fail. It's a, here are the things that are wrong with this particular house, because every house has something, every single one. So yeah, so you're just gonna maybe have the next person ask you for it. So you really just should consider working that through with the buyers. It's better for you as a seller to go ahead and just make this work, because every buyer is there. There's going to be a lot of things that most buyers will agree need to be fixed. Okay, it's going to come up a lot. Anyway, so let's say that the seller makes a counter offer, because that's what this is. It's a counter offer to the amendment you've requested. Then here you can go, the buyer either agrees or does not. So chances are we've probably talked it through, right? We've probably verbally talked it through. And then the buyer says, that's fine, we're moving on. Okay. One thing that I would like to add, because I'm going to actually add this contingency removal form. So one thing that I want to add here is right here, it says that if the seller agrees to buyer's requests, or even some of buyer's requests, and buyer accepts that, then the buyer will be removing the investigation of property contingency. So what does that mean? That means that there's a lot of investigation to be done. I like to put that, because all of this insurance, review of seller's docs, a lot of this all falls under the same umbrella, right? So I would rather, for myself, when I do these for my buyers, I say buyer removes those contingencies identified in the contingency removal form. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to go, this is only for the request for repairs. If you're in California and you're looking at your form and you're saying, and your agent sent it over to you and they say, okay, hey, we're going to just remove a portion of this, and then you see that this box isn't checked, you're basically agreeing to remove your contingencies without any stipulation, right? So the stipulation here is directly tied to the request for repairs, okay? It's directly tied to that, because this says right here that if the seller agrees, or the seller makes your counteroffer, the buyer agrees to that. So once this agreement has happened, then, and in all fairness, then you're going to remove some of your contingencies. But which ones are you going to remove, right? So this is where we want to make super certain that unless some of these have already been met, and that's fine, because if they have, then great. But if they haven't, I like to come in here, because when it really comes to the request for repairs, in my professional opinion, the request for repairs is only about the physical attributes of the property, generally speaking, right? So I would want to put in only the part of the investigation related to inspections concerning physical attributes. So I will come in and check this. right? And then that is going to be what you're going to sign. So it's going to say, based on the request for repairs, if you agree, seller, to do, if we come to an agreement and you're going to do these fixes, then I will remove this contingency, because that would be the fair thing to do, right? Not keep your seller in limbo forever, but also it's already saying that you're agreeing to remove stuff, right? So I would like to make it more specific to just this, so you're not agreeing to remove other things like the entire investigation contingency. So that's basically paragraph 12 of the contract. You can read that, you can see what I'm talking about, but I'm trying to make this more specific so that you as the buyer are going to be a little more protected. Okay, now the seller can either respond on this like we've discussed, or they have this other RRRR, which is hilarious because it's basically response, reply, request for repairs. Or I just recently heard it called the quad R. I like that a lot better. So the seller can choose to respond on this form too. Either way is fine. And then you can also respond that you accept. Now here's another thing. Oops, I've got my wrong company. There we go, LPT Realty. LPT, very happy at LPT. Although Keller Williams is a great brokerage. But anyway, so I'm going to do also, and I usually do this at the inspection, I do my agent visual inspection disclosure. So here is what the form that I need to fill out. Now, having said that, so I'm going to fill this out as I'm walking through the property, and I'm just going to, based on what I see, I'm going to tell you what I see. So I'm going to walk through the property, I'm going to look around, and I might say, oh, there's a stain on the ceiling. I am not qualified to tell you what kind of stain that is. I could take a guess, but that's what it would be, right? So I'm not going to put water stain or watermark on the ceiling. I'm going to put stain on ceiling. And I'm not going to say it's big or small, because that is subjective, right? So I'm not going to say large water stain on ceiling. No. I'm going to say stain on ceiling, because I'm just going to tell you what I see, because I'm going to be doing an overview as well for you. Obviously, I'm not an inspector, or, contractors coming in is also a good idea. I'm just telling you from my point of view and walking through many, many houses that there's things that I'm going to notice, and I'm legally required to walk through that house and tell you what I see. As your agent, right? It's important, right? So as your buyer's agent, and if I'm working with somebody else, because I do have some partnerships that I have, but so let's say I'm working with Karen can also walk through, and we're going to both be your agents. We would actually have that on yet another form disclosing that. But Karen also is perfectly qualified to walk through and say stain on ceiling. But, for those of you, just, so my understanding from the attorneys is that you still have to walk through as the agent. You have to be like, yes, I've seen the property. I've walked through the property. And this is kind of proof of that, right? I'm not just going to sit back somewhere else and tell you that I've walked through. Again, if I'm working with other agents and they are also your agent, they can walk through as well. It doesn't have to be both of us, but it has to be one of us. So I also have this as sort of my just go-to normal wear and tear noted, because in every house, that's going to be the case. All right. I don't check the utilities. I don't go on the roof. I don't turn on water, partly because I don't want to mess up people's house, right? That's for Jeremiah or whoever your inspector is to do. I don't check your appliances. I don't always open windows. Sometimes I do. It kind of depends on, first of all, the access to the window. And some windows don't look like they're going to open very well, but I'll just note that, or sometimes I'll even, open and close a closet door and it's not sliding very well. And I'll note those things. I will note what I see, but your inspector takes hours to go through a house and take a look at everything for you. My job is to tell you what I see as a realtor that visits a lot of houses, right? So I can tell you almost every time I'm in the garage and parking areas, I will almost always put cracks and stains on cement, because there's almost always cracks and stains on the cement. So anyway, so that's pretty funny. So that is the process. And hopefully this wasn't too long of a video for you guys, but I do think that this part is very important, because not only is it is it telling you, again, it's a snapshot in time. The inspector can go through one day And then the next day, the air conditioning breaks. It happens. Because they're fine till they're not, right? And maybe there's not even any wear and tear on it. Something fell into it. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? It's not always going to be, it's not a perfect science. What it is, it's a good idea that you're now going to have after getting that inspection done of what you're going to be in for when you buy this property. Every property requires maintenance. And I see this a lot where people who I'm helping them sell their homes, or I am showing a home to a buyer, and they clearly, we have deferred maintenance issues, right? So deferred maintenance is maintenance that just hasn't been done and should have been, right? Every home requires maintenance. You can't just buy the home and expect that it's going to stay perfect forever. But if you know what you're walking into with maybe more than normal maintenance issues, you're going to have a much easier time, especially that first year when you also will likely have a home warranty as well. And are they difficult to work with? Yes. I'm sorry, home warranty people out there, but you got to know. I mean, not everyone's making it easy. Having said that, you battle through it because it was paid for on your behalf, buyer, and use it, right? Because at the end of the day, most of the time they're going to do what's right, okay? So they're going to fix your item that needs to be fixed. But anyway, when you know what you're getting into and your expectations have been set properly and you're going into this with open eyes, I think that's really what all of this process is about. The whole process of even these videos is about helping set expectations, because I have found that when people know what to expect, give or take, we're not going to know everything, but when you know what to expect, the process becomes much more demystified. It's much more clear what's going to happen and who, why, what, where, and when. And you're going to have a much more maybe not stress-free, but less stressful process. Because even if you're just moving, it's always stressful, but a less stressful process moving forward. So having said that, that wraps up our inspection contingency. If you are enjoying these videos, I would so appreciate a like. It would make my day. Every time I see those, I get very excited. And if you would like to subscribe to my channel, if this content is valuable for you, that would be amazing as well. And I am Lisa Angel with LPT Realty, and I am located in the Palm Springs and Desert Cities area, and I am helping you live your best desert life. Take care.